Paulie, and it is a pleasure and an honor to be with all of you today, and to have our special guest, who's a gentleman that I came to know when I was running a startup from '06 to '09. I ran a business called USphere, which was eHarmony meets Lending Tree for the college admissions process. And we bumped into quite a few people who knew what they were talking about when it comes to college admissions, college planning, financial aid, and how all of those things, that whole dynamic of student and parent and family and school and college and high school, how all of that melds together. And we figured that that would be a valuable thing for the Metafinance community to take a look at. So today we are chatting with the one and only Paul Hemphill. He is a college admissions consultant and advisor, a college financial planning guy. He is in suburban Boston, Massachusetts. And Paul, it is a pleasure to have you here on the show today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm anxious to answer some questions. I'm sure, knowing you, Dave, you've got some good ones. So
yeah, well,
fire away.
I certainly try. And, you know, there was something, and we'll share this with our community, with the audio of this conversation. We'll also share the link to the YouTube video that you sent me that you had recently done about the enormous amounts of student debt that people are going into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The video's back on now. Okay.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. And I was mentioning that the student debt amounts are so enormous in that video that you shared, that we'll share with the viewers. But one of the quotes that you had said, I'm going to read from: "Why do we as adults allow a 17-year-old to make a decision with this amount of gravity, and it's going to take them that much, you know, perhaps the rest of their lives to pay off?" And what brought us to this point where kids are 17, 18 years of age, and they're saying, "No, it's okay, I'll go into debt, couple $100,000, doesn't bother me"? What's brought us to this point, and is there any turning back in your mind?
You know, I would love to know what's brought us to this point. It's a point of insanity, and I think that the parents are being so irresponsible by telling their kids, "All right, look, we're going to support you all the way. You're so talented, you're bright, you deserve the best that education can offer, and we're going to do whatever we can to get you into the best schools," not knowing what it means to go to the best schools, and not being honest with the student by saying that we really can't afford the best schools, but well, you know, you can take out lots of loans. You're in the first half of your life, and you've got the rest of your life to pay off these loans, and we're really in the last half of our lives, and we can't be paying back any loans. We can't take out any loans. In fact, no one's going to send us any loans for retirement, but they'll send us loans for college. So, but you're a very talented kid, and you'll be able to find a great job if you get into a great school, and you'll be able to pay back those loans in no time. It's all silly logic. And as a result, it's causing unbelievable turmoil in families, and the debt load is just enormous. And I just remember a meeting I had in downtown Boston a few days ago, and I had a fellow walk up to me after he discovered who I was and what I did, and he said, I got an interesting story to tell you. I said, "What's that?" He said, I do a lot of credit checks in the course of a day, and about every month I do about 200 credit checks on people who have just recently graduated from college, and at least half of them have a debt of at least $100,000. And then he said there was a fellow that he had just checked out the other day. It was a kid from Northeastern who just announced to him that he had $220,000 worth of debt. And he said to me, he says, "How are these kids going to be paying back this kind of debt?" And basically asking the same question: who are the parents and where are the parents of these kids who are saying to these kids, it's okay to run up this kind of debt if that's what you want to do? It's so, I like to use the word disgusting, because it is disgusting to see a 22-year-old with that kind of debt getting his receipt, that they like to call the degree, from the college at graduation time, and knowing that he's not going to get an apartment, he's not going to be able to buy a car, he's not going to be able to buy a house, and if he's really in love with somebody, he's not going to be able to get married because no sensible girl probably is going to marry a guy that's got that kind of debt. It just isn't going to happen. So, in addition to debt, we've got heartbreak, and I don't know. Something's got to stop. Somebody's got to stop telling these kids it's okay to have debt as a component of going to college. It's not a component. You should reject it as a component. And find something that you can afford, because there's nearly 3,000 four-year colleges out there, and there are plenty of colleges that you can afford without any debt. You just have to get out of that mindset that the more money you spend on a college, the better your education. Whoever said that's true.
Yeah, and so I guess as a follow-up to that, then, if you're the person who's working with the parent and student, because you get involved in the process earlier as opposed to later, correct? I mean, you're not talking to people second semester, senior year who are panicking.
Exactly.
So what do you say to stem that tide? What do you say when you're looking directly at a kid and looking directly at the parents, and you want them to know, okay, you may be Harvard material, but when that financial aid package shows up and it's going to cost you $50,000-$60,000 a year, you may not want to be Harvard material, and it's okay to move to some other school on the list.
Correct.
How do you do that as a counselor? How do you talk some sense into these people?
Great question. And I pose this question as the very first question I ask anytime I sit down with a family. I look straight in the eye at the parents and I say, I need for you to tell me, what is the maximum dollar amount that you're willing to spend on your child's education? And I need an honest answer right now. And that question hits them right between the eyes because they've never thought of the question. And I'm thinking, okay, it's a good thing I showed up here today, because if you didn't think of the question, you're going to fall into the same rut that all these other parents fall into, and that is, well, we'll figure it out somehow. Well, no, you're not going to figure it out somehow. You're just going to give your kids lots of debt, and that's the way it's going to end. So this is what I force my clients to do. You give me a dollar figure. Give me an example. Yes, a couple of days ago, I posed the question to a parent. She says, we don't really have a lot of money, but I have enough money to send my kid to a private Catholic school here in the Boston area, and I'm paying $1,500 a month, and we don't make a lot of money, so $1,500 a month is really my maximum. I said, okay, over a 10-month period, that's $15,000 a year. Okay, $15,000 a year, and if the student signs for a Stafford loan, which is $5,500, okay, this family can afford a $20,000 a year school. Does that make sense? And she said, yeah, that makes sense. I said, okay, well, we're not going to Northeastern, we're not going to Boston College, and we're not going to Boston University. We're going to be applying to UMass or a state school, right? Because that's where the figure that we're talking about falls into. And the daughter says, yeah, but I want to go to Northeastern. Well, of course, she's 16 years old, and what does she know? And the parents corrected her and say, you're not going to Northeastern, honey. You're going to a school like UMass, because as Mr. Hemphill is trying to tell us, is that we cannot afford a Northeastern, but we can afford a UMass. So it's really a reality check that I have to really hit these parents with right in the beginning before we go off onto these la-la places that they think they're going to be able to go to when their finances just aren't going to let it happen.
You just touched on something interesting, Paul, that I wanted to expound on, which is you said when talking to this particular family, the student could themselves take out a Stafford loan, $5,500 a year.
Yeah, each year for the first 2 years, which they sign for, not the parents. And then on the third year, they can sign for $6,500, and in the fourth year, they can sign for $7,500. So the total debt would be about $27,000 on the student, not on the parents.
Okay, so if you graduate, because I'm showing my age a little bit, it has been a long enough since I graduated. I don't exactly remember what my debt load was. I do remember having had student loans. If someone's getting out in 4 years from now and they've got $27,000 in student loan debt, is that an okay amount? Is that high? I know it sounds low when compared to some of the examples that you gave earlier, but is it possible that that's an okay amount for somebody to look at?
Well, it depends on the family situation. It depends upon the student and how much of a debt load he's willing to take on based upon some realistic information that hopefully is being given to the family at that point, which is what I consider my job to be. So I always have to ask these kind of tough questions, financial questions, before I start coming up with a college list. Just to give you an example, I sat down with a family where the father was making about $380,000 a year, and when I posed the question to him, "What are you willing to spend a year?" In a flash, he gave me a figure of 25,000, just like that. I mean, it was very unusual. I never encountered an answer that fast. And when I asked him, "How did you pick that figure?" He says, "That's all I think any college education is worth on a yearly basis, and that's the maximum I'm going."
Wow.
And I happened to show up when the girl was starting her senior year, which is kind of late in the process for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when she handed me her list, every college on that list was a private school, all in the 40 plus a year range. And I looked at it, I said, "Well, you won't be applying to any of these schools." And when she realized what I meant by that, she burst into tears and got up and left the room.
Wow.
And the father said, and I felt terrible for the student, and the father said, "Don't feel terrible." He says, "I'm really glad you showed up today." But he was a realist, and he was approaching the issue of college very soundly. I had a lot of respect for this guy, and things really worked out. And we found a college that he was willing to spend 25 grand on, and it ended up being like 22. And she got a scholarship, so I got it down to about 16, and he was thrilled.
And is the daughter thrilled?
Yes, we happened to find a school, because the problem with the daughter, like most 17-year-olds, that they have these visions of these schools that their friends talk about that we ought to all apply to because they're really cool schools, man. They're great, and they're uppity, crusty schools, and there's wonderful suites and gymnasiums that nobody uses, and that's
right.
that sort of thing. And so, of course, colleges are masters at marketing fluff and stuff. It has nothing to do with the intellectual growth of the student. So, but the students don't care. I mean, that's the way it is. So. Something's come up on the screen that looks a little weird. I think we're still alive. Let's see. Can you still hear me? I think so. Waiting for people to join. Let's see. I don't hear anything. I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. Too bad. don't know what that is. Join this video call. Dave, you still there?